She looked you in the eyes and said you were different. You checked her profile again. You ran the math in your head, you noticed things you weren't supposed to notice, and then told yourself it didn't matter. Most men do exactly that. They feel it, they see it, and they bury it, because nobody ever told them that a woman's sexual history isn't just her past, it's a map. And maps don't lie. If this is already hitting somewhere you weren't expecting, stay with it. What gets discussed here is the kind of clarity most men spend years avoiding, and a few minutes understanding changes everything. There are 7 specific signs, observable, behavioral, psychological, that reveal far more than she'll ever say out loud, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. 1. The way she talks about her past, what she says, how she says it, and what she never says at all. There's a pattern most men miss entirely. It's not what she says about her past. It's the ease with which she says it. A woman who has accumulated a significant sexual history has, almost without exception, developed a fluency around the subject. She doesn't stumble. She doesn't blush. She navigates those conversations with a kind of practiced calm that only comes from having had them before, many times. And if a man isn't paying close attention, he'll mistake that calm for emotional maturity. That fluency is one of the earliest red flags a man can detect. Not because openness is inherently dangerous, but because there's a difference between a woman who has processed her past and one who has simply normalized it. Female psychology reveals something critical here. The way a person speaks about their sexual history tells you far more about their current values than the history itself. When she references past men with zero emotional weight, with almost clinical detachment, that's not growth, that's desensitization. Rollo Tomassi has written extensively about this behavioral pattern, the way modern dating has socially conditioned women to see their sexual history as entirely consequence-free. And in the short term, for them, it often is. But for the man sitting across from her, trying to read the situation, the signals are all there. The uncomfortable reality is this: most men are never taught to read them. They're taught to ignore them, to not judge, to pretend the past doesn't matter. It does. When she references a former partner almost too casually, no hesitation, no wait, no pause, file that away. When she pivots quickly from the topic without actually answering the question, file that away too. Behavioral patterns don't lie. People reveal themselves constantly, in fragments, in micro-expressions, in the speed of a deflection. The man who has developed self-awareness understands that silence is data. Vagueness is data. Even the way someone breathes through a question is data. What a man needs to develop here is not paranoia, it's precision. There's a significant difference between reading a situation clearly and projecting insecurity onto it. That distinction lies entirely in inner strength. A man who has done the work on himself doesn't flinch when difficult information surfaces. He observes. He evaluates. He decides from a place of personal sovereignty, not from fear. And that quality, that unshakable masculine frame, is exactly what most men have never been taught to build. 2. Her relationship with physical intimacy, speed, comfort, and the absence of resistance. Pay attention to how quickly physical comfort escalates. Not because speed is inherently a red flag, context always matters, but because a woman's baseline comfort with physical intimacy is shaped, over time, by her cumulative experiences. Primal instincts don't disappear, they adapt. And what once required emotional investment, over time, can become simply mechanical. A man with a calibrated eye will notice when intimacy feels like a transaction rather than a revelation. This isn't about judgment. This is about information. Power dynamics in early relationships are almost always set in those first physical encounters, and a man who understands this doesn't give that ground away carelessly. If she moves through physical escalation without any visible emotional processing, without the natural tension that comes with genuine vulnerability, that absence is itself a signal. Something was trained out of her, or never developed in the first place. Stoicism, in the classical sense, teaches a man to observe without reacting, to see clearly without distorting reality through the lens of desire. This is precisely where most men fail. The biological pull is strong, and it's designed to override clear thinking. But the man who has developed real self-mastery understands that desire and discernment are not opposites. You can want something and still see it clearly. In fact, that's the only honest way to want anything. There's a useful frame here from evolutionary psychology. Women, biologically, have always had more to lose from indiscriminate physical choices than men. That asymmetry shaped thousands of years of behavioral instinct. When those instincts are overridden by social conditioning, by repeated exposure, by cultural permission, the signature that remains is a kind of frictionlessness. Everything feels easy, comfortable, practiced. And that frictionlessness in the early stages of a connection is worth examining closely. None of this gives a man the right to be cruel, cold, or dismissive. But it does give him the right, the responsibility, to be honest with himself about what he's observing. Emotional detachment in this context doesn't mean indifference. It means clarity. It means the ability to sit with what you're seeing and ask, what does this actually tell me? And more importantly, what do I actually want? That question, answered honestly, is where a man's real power begins. 3. How she handles commitment conversations, the subtle art of keeping options open. There's a specific kind of woman who never fully closes the door. She moves toward intimacy, creates connection, generates warmth, and yet, when the conversation turns toward exclusivity, something shifts. The language becomes slippery. The timeline gets vague. Suddenly she's not sure where this is going or just wants things to stay natural. That shift from warmth to strategic ambiguity is one of the clearest behavioral patterns a perceptive man will encounter in modern dating. Hypergamy, as a concept, is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean women are manipulative or calculating in a conscious sense. It means that, by design, women are wired to remain open to better options. That's evolutionary logic, not moral failure. But a man who understands this principle stops taking ambiguity personally and starts reading it accurately. When commitment feels like it's always one conversation away but never actually arrives, that's not confusion. That's strategy operating beneath the level of conscious awareness. The dark truth is that most men spend months, sometimes years, inside that ambiguity, hoping that consistency will convert her, that patience will be rewarded, that love will eventually override whatever hesitation she carries. And sometimes it does. But a man who has taken the red pill, not as a bitter ideology, but as a clear-eyed understanding of how attraction and commitment actually function, knows the difference between a woman who is genuinely uncertain and a woman who is keeping her options architecturally open. Here's what that looks like in practice. She introduces you to friends, but always with ambiguous language. She talks about the future, but never in a way that includes you specifically. She's affectionate in private, but careful in public. Each of these behaviors, in isolation, is explainable. Together, they form a pattern. And patterns, as any man with real self-awareness will tell you, are the only honest biography a person ever writes. A man with masculine identity doesn't chase that ambiguity down. He doesn't beg for clarity. He creates conditions, through his frame, his presence, his standards, that make ambiguity uncomfortable for her to maintain. Not through manipulation, but through the silent pressure of a man who knows exactly what he wants. That energy, that grounded certainty, is more effective than any conversation about where things are going. It forces honesty. And honesty, however uncomfortable, is always the better foundation. 4. Her social circle and what it quietly reveals about her values. Show a man someone's closest friends, and he'll understand the person within minutes. This isn't a harsh judgment, it's a fundamental truth about human behavior. We self-select our environments. We gravitate toward people who mirror our values, our appetites, our relationship with risk and consequence. A woman's social circle isn't just background noise in her life. It's a live document of her psychological world, and a man who learns to read it gains access to information she would never volunteer directly. If the majority of her close female friends rotate through partners frequently, treat relationships as entertainment, and regard male attention as a form of currency, understand that she is not an anomaly in that group. She is a member of it. People don't maintain close friendships with those whose values fundamentally contradict their own. Social conditioning works in both directions. We shape our environments and our environments shape us. Her friendships reveal what she has normalized, what she finds acceptable, and where her behavioral ceiling sits. This is not about isolating a woman from her friends or demanding she change her social world. A man operating from masculine frame doesn't do that. What he does is observe without illusion. He asks himself, clearly and without the distortion of emotional investment, does this social environment reflect the kind of woman I actually want to build something with? That question, asked honestly, answered honestly, protects him from years of preventable confusion. Psychological triggers are embedded in social environments. A group of friends who consistently glamorize single life, mock committed men, or treat loyalty as a limitation will, over time, exert real gravitational pull on any woman within it, regardless of her intentions. A man who understands this doesn't panic, but he does factor it in. He understands that choosing a partner means, in some degree, choosing proximity to her world, and that world has weight. The male awakening that comes from understanding this principle is quiet but significant. It shifts a man out of the romantic fantasy, where love conquers all external influence, and into a more grounded, more honest evaluation of long-term compatibility. It doesn't make him cold. It makes him accurate. And accuracy in choosing who to invest in emotionally is one of the highest forms of respect a man can show himself. Not just as a partner, but as a person with limited time, limited energy, and an unlimited capacity to make better choices. 5. The science behind pair bonding and what high body count actually does to it. In 2010, researchers at the University of Texas, led by evolutionary psychologist David Buss, published findings that pointed to a significant correlation between a woman's number of prior sexual partners and her long-term relationship satisfaction, not just for her, but for her partner. The study wasn't designed to shame anyone. It was designed to understand something that most people already sensed but couldn't articulate: that repeated physical intimacy with multiple partners has measurable neurobiological consequences on the brain's capacity to form deep, exclusive emotional bonds. The mechanism is oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone. It's released during physical intimacy and is responsible for the sense of emotional attachment that follows. The uncomfortable reality is that, like many neurological responses, it can be desensitized through repetition. A high body count doesn't just represent a history of partners. It represents a history of oxytocin cycles, each one potentially diminishing the depth of the next. This is not a moral argument. It's a biological one, and it has profound implications for anyone thinking seriously about long-term commitment. Think about a man who came across this research in his early 30s. He had been in a relationship for 2 years with a woman he genuinely cared about. The connection felt real, but something was always slightly off. She was warm, but rarely deeply vulnerable. Affectionate, but almost never emotionally raw. He couldn't name it. He just felt it. When he eventually understood the neuroscience behind pair bonding, something clicked into place. Not as an excuse to leave, but as an honest explanation for what he had been feeling without language for it. What this understanding gives a man is not permission to be cruel, it gives him permission to be honest. About what he wants. About what's actually possible within a given dynamic. About whether the emotional depth he's seeking is realistically available in the relationship he's in. That honesty, as brutal as it can feel in the moment, is the only foundation worth building on. And a man who has done the inner work to face uncomfortable information without flinching is already operating at a level most men never reach. The principle of self-mastery isn't just about controlling emotion in the moment. It's about building the internal architecture to receive difficult truths and act on them clearly. Most men, when they encounter this information, do one of two things. They weaponize it bitterly, or they suppress it entirely. The man who has genuinely developed personal sovereignty does neither. He integrates it. He allows it to inform his choices without poisoning his character. The distinction between informed discernment and resentful judgment is the difference between a man who grows and a man who simply hardens. 6. Emotional availability and the invisible ceiling she carries. There's a ceiling some women carry that no amount of patience, love, or consistency will raise. It's not visible, it's not announced. But a man who has been in the right relationship, and the wrong one, knows exactly what it feels like to press up against it. He brings depth. She offers warmth, but not depth in return. He creates space for real vulnerability. She fills it with charm, but never quite with truth. That invisible ceiling is one of the most precise indicators of a woman's relational history, and one of the most painful to acknowledge. Emotional availability is not the same as emotional expressiveness. A woman can cry at movies, talk about her feelings openly, and still be fundamentally unavailable for the kind of sustained, reciprocal emotional intimacy that a healthy long-term relationship requires. The difference is directionality. Emotional expressiveness moves outward. Emotional availability moves inward. It requires a willingness to receive, to be changed by another person, to allow genuine closeness. That inward movement is precisely what becomes difficult after a history of relationships that never asked for it. Female psychology, at its depth, is oriented towards security. But security means different things depending on a woman's relational history. For a woman with a limited sexual past and a history of emotionally invested relationships, security often means depth and consistency. For a woman whose history has been defined by variety, stimulation, and emotional non-commitment, security can paradoxically feel like constraint. That's not a character flaw. It's a conditioned response. But it has enormous consequences for what's actually possible between her and a man who wants something real. A man who understands power dynamics within relationships understands that emotional availability cannot be negotiated into existence. It cannot be earned through patience. It cannot be generated by being sufficiently impressive, sufficiently present, or sufficiently loving. Either the capacity is there, or it isn't. And the only honest move a man has is to see that truth clearly, as early as possible, before he has invested years into a dynamic that was structurally incapable of giving him what he needed. This is where Stoicism becomes not just a philosophy but a survival tool. The Stoic man doesn't rage against the ceiling. He doesn't beg to be let through it. He observes it, names it, and makes a decision from a place of clarity rather than desperation. He understands that his emotional needs are not weaknesses, they are requirements. And a man who treats his own requirements as negotiable will spend his life in relationships that teach him the same lesson, over and over, in increasingly expensive ways. 7. The final sign, how she treats the men she no longer needs. Watch how she speaks about the men who loved her and left, or loved her and were left. Not in anger, listen for what's beneath the anger, or more tellingly, for the complete absence of it. A woman who has moved through many relationships without significant emotional consequence will often speak about former partners with a detachment that borders on indifference. Not cruelty, necessarily. Just nothing. An absence of weight, as if those men and whatever they shared were simply items in a sequence rather than chapters in a life. That absence of emotional residue is a signal worth taking seriously. It's not proof of anything on its own, but in combination with everything else on this list, it completes a picture. Because the way a person speaks about those who love them reveals, more than almost anything else, their relationship with love itself. A woman who has processed real heartbreak, who has genuinely been changed by loving someone and losing them, carries that quietly. It shows. Conversely, a woman who has moved through partners without being meaningfully marked by any of them shows that too. Behavioral patterns are the most honest autobiography a person ever writes. Not what they say about themselves in a first conversation, not the values they claim to hold, but the way they've actually moved through the world, the choices they've made repeatedly, the things they've treated as expendable, the people they've been willing to discard. A man with genuine self-awareness reads that autobiography with open eyes, not to condemn, not to disqualify, but to understand, clearly, honestly, without the comfortable distortions that desire tends to create. The red pill, at its most useful, is not a weapon, it's a lens. And what it allows a man to see, clearly, without flinching, is that not every woman is built for the kind of relationship he actually wants. That's not a tragedy, that's information. And information, received honestly, is the beginning of every meaningful choice a man has ever made. The man who has undergone real male awakening doesn't use this knowledge to degrade women. He uses it to protect his own investment of time, energy, and emotional depth. Here's the brutal honesty that most men never receive from anyone who actually cares about them. Choosing the right woman is not primarily about attraction. It's not about chemistry. It's not even about compatibility in the conventional sense. It's about alignment of values, of relational history, of emotional architecture. A man who chooses with his eyes fully open, who reads the signs that exist in plain sight, who refuses to sacrifice his masculine identity on the altar of wishful thinking. That man doesn't just build better relationships. He builds a better life. And that begins not with finding the right person, but with becoming the kind of man whose clarity makes the wrong ones impossible to settle for. You made it to the end. And that already says something about you. Most men scroll past this kind of content. They catch the title, feel the discomfort it produces somewhere in the chest, and move on. Because sitting with this kind of information requires something most men have quietly stopped doing, taking themselves seriously enough to ask the hard questions. You ask them. That matters. So here's the challenge now, not tomorrow. Right now. Think about the woman you're with, or the one you're pursuing, or the one you keep returning to in your mind at 11 at night. Run these 7 signs honestly against what you actually know, not what you hope, not what she told you, but what you have observed. What do the behavioral patterns say? What does the emotional ceiling feel like when you press against it? What does her past, told in the way she tells it, actually reveal? This is not about building a case against her. This is about building clarity for yourself, because a man who sees clearly, who has developed the self-awareness to read a situation without the distortion of need or longing, is a man who can actually choose. Not react. Not settle. Choose. Here's what I want you to do. Drop a comment below. Tell me which of these 7 signs hit closest to home. Just write the number, or if you've lived this and come out the other side right, I see it now. That's it. 3 words. Let other men know they're not alone in this. And if you've found value in what gets built here, this channel exists for the man who's done pretending the comfortable version of the truth is enough for him. There's more on this channel that will challenge everything you thought you understood about yourself and the women you choose. Not every man is ready for it, but you already proved tonight that you might be. You didn't just watch a video, you started reading a map you should have had years ago.